Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's talk about something a little different. In this case, Mark Miller's new Nightclub #1 book out by Image. It is different in that it is priced to sell. I tip my hat at you, Mr. Miller. I know you listen to the show. Thank you for that, by the way, and a nice plug in your newsletter the other day. I have to imagine people looking at that, looking at those three names, are like, these three people are nothing alike. But anyway, it's fine. I do appreciate the plug. It is, but the price you have for this comic, it's a good move. We're trying to pull in new readers. There needs to be better entry points. It's good. That said, I talked to several retailers about this. They didn't know that the book was priced at this. And this is the problem, is the retailers and this entire business has acclimated itself to a price point and just a way of doing business that it's going to take some repetition. It's going to take a lot more kind of informing to jolt the system. We haven't jolted the system enough. I think that you have the ability. I believe there's co-marketing, depending on who you're distributing with, where you get a certain allocation that you could send flyers and things out without you putting in an expense. They may have discontinued that through the whole COVID shenanigans, but check in with Diamond or whoever else. And this might be worth, you basically putting out a kind of a cheeky little, hey dummies, it's cheaper. It might be worth your time, but anyway, silly, absolutely silly if this stuff goes on. So let me read you this mail. So this is a viewer talking about the Nightclub #1 issue. It says, "Hey Perch, I read Mark Miller's Nightclub #1. I thought the story was just okay. I like the art more. Did you know that this comic has a Spanish artist, an Italian female colorist, a Scottish writer? The main character's last name is Garcia. One of the main supporting characters is a fat, brown-skinned guy, and the other supporting character is an Asian girl. Plus, the comic is cheap, just $2. And yet, the people on Twitter who are poor and want diverse comic creators and characters are not talking about this book, as far as I can tell. Admittedly, not a lot of people are talking about this comic in general, but still, I might interject here to say, what comics are people talking about? Pregnant Joker. That's what they're talking. That's what they're talking about. No, the people, but outside of the lulls and the jokes and mocking things, people aren't talking about comics. I mean that inherently is the big problem. But anyway. Sorry, back to the mail. Based on how many complaints one hears about there not being enough diversity in comics, one would think that the people who would praise and want and talk about this book would be the people who want diversity. But I think they do not talk about this comic because they didn't even read or buy it to begin with, even with the low price. They talk a big talk about wanting diversity in comics, but they do not go out of their way to search for or find the diversity that is there. I personally think they want the diversity handed to them on a silver platter that says voices or pride in big bold letters on the cover. There's one flaw, and I understand where you're going, we'll talk about it, but there's one flaw in what you just said. Those books don't sell. Voices and pride they if you look at what actually goes through the direct market, the sales are terrible. A site, won't mention which one, Comics Beat, they completely misled about the numbers of one of the earlier versions of this and published a completely fictional number that was immediately he didn't refute it, but then Comic-Con came out with radically different numbers and they just look stupid. I've heard that there were some groups that bought up copies of this comic, and I know that I can't remember now if it was Marvel or I think it was DC, marketed this book to kind of support organizations and other places and got some additional sales that way. But those books didn't sell. So when you say, I think they want diversity handed to them on a silver platter that says voices or pride and big bold letters on the cover. They don't, though. They don't buy those either. For what it's worth. But anyway, let's finish up the mail. Why is this? Is it laziness, ignorance, or are there people who want diversity, just a pack of brainless shrill harpies? I like how you came to an end on that one. Thank you very much for writing in. The people who are yelling about this stuff are not people who are going out and buying the comics. They want comics to be a certain way. And when I say the people, I'm sure there are 5% of the comic buying audience or those people. It's not, nothing is 100%. I recognize and acknowledge there are exceptions. Don't come at me, bro, over exceptions. But by and large, and I think we have enough sales data to prove it, this is a very emotionless statement I'm about to make. This isn't about mocking people for hypocrisy or anything else. It's just a fact. The people on Twitter who yell about wanting this stuff don't buy the books. The sales numbers prove it. They just flat prove it. And the reason being is the people who are asking for this stuff and talking about it, they're not interested in buying comics. They want the industry to look a certain way. They want it to, be perceived a certain way. If you really kind of take the red pill, you believe that they want to take something away from someone else. And that may inherently be true. I think more, I don't think a lot of people think that far ahead. I think more of what they do is they enjoy the fight. They enjoy going on social media and saying, look at these dumb assholes over here. I'm going to make fun of them. And I'm going to basically poke and say they're bigots. And then I'll get a bunch of people who will like. Because if you attack someone else, whether it's on YouTube, or it's on Twitter, Facebook, wherever it happens to be, no matter what the topic is, if you're whatever you're attacking, you will get a group of people who will show up to clap and cheer like dumb little seals and applaud your efforts because they're there for the entertainment of watching you attack someone. It's like the people who would go watch bum fights. I'm sorry, homeless people fight. Sorry, unhoused people fights. It's very, very similar. The people who are saying, I demand, when somebody posts, Laura Kinney is the only true Wolverine. That's Wolverine now. That person is not, making a bold statement about their appreciation for X-23 and the various trials and tribulations that she's had in order to get to be the hero that she is today. Not at all. That person is not thinking at all about that stuff. That person is purely just looking for a reaction. They've seen some bigger names who have gotten a lot of reaction. They get various people in there going, you stupid, and then you're able to turn around like, look at all the incels in my mentions. I had to finally mute this thread because I got attacked. And then that gets likes too. That's all that's going on. To your point, and looking at a lot of these books, I mean, there's a lot of books out there, Nightclub being one of them, that has a very diverse cast, behind the scenes and on the page. It is a victory to see a multicultural group of people. The big victory for me is not just hey, look at all the races we put into this soup, but rather, hey, look at the coordination where a comic book that looks nice. I mean, the comic book does look nice. I like the story. I mean, the story is the simple-ish, like, kind of irresponsible teen. Not that it was, teen gets powers beyond their control, decides to use them to have fun and go nuts. So it's not the Lost Boys, but it's a similar theme, and Miller's going to have fun with that theme. But you got a good-looking comic book out there. You got good art. The coloring looks good. I think the story is good. It's priced right. It's got and it was done across countries and continents. That takes coordination. That's impressive. It's impressive, and it's heartening that a comic can get made like this, involving a lot of different people, a lot of different ideas and different voices, and putting it together. That's a win. That's a win for people who want to make comics. Yeah, look, a bunch of people are different cultures, different races. I mean, that's cool. Sure. I mean, I'm more impressed by the coordination, but that's me. I'm a logistical businessman. But it is a victory, and people should be saying, hey, look, this is really cool. Look what happened. But they're not, and they're not because Miller doesn't spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on Twitter bitching about, systemic racism and the patriarchy and whatever the hell Trump's up to today and all the rest. That's why. If he was doing that, I guarantee you would see that Comics Beat Bleeding Cool article out there. Miller creates multicultural, and we're here for it. You'd see the Mary Sue up there with, finally, the comic we've been waiting for. You'd see all that stuff, but you're not going to, because it really has nothing to do with the comic at all. It has to do with the individual. That's the state of things. That's where we are with all this stuff. So what do you do about it if you're a comics fan? If you're a comics fan, you ignore it. You ignore all that shit. If you're a comics creator, you set out to make the best story you can. And if the best story just happens to have a brown-skinned supporting character and an Asian girl, and cool, then it's probably going to be a great story. I don't know, make it a great story, and it's fine. The rest will work out. If you're writing in the hopes that this audience on Twitter is going to rally behind your cause and say, you're the champion of diversity today, we're buying your comic. Unfortunately, we have lots and lots and lots of history and evidence to suggest that's not going to happen. It's a bad business plan. It is a safer bet to just write a good story. And if your story happens to be diverse, cool, win-win. But it's a story that's going to sell your book. It's the art quality that's going to sell your book. It's the team. It's not going to be any of the rest. You look at these the Voices and the Pride book that has come out, the various ones, and then kind of the different issues they've done over the last 5 or 6 years. You know what's missing? Any conversation about what goes on in those books, other than people who are mocking it. So a ghostwriter creating a ghostwriter train gets mocked as he's fighting kind of knockoff MAGA people. That will get mocked. Actual talking about the story, was there what is in the Voices book of Hispanic heritage, there was 4 stories in there about making food. Did anybody go in there and go hey, actually that recipe for empanadas that was in that comic was really good. I tried it at home, and thank goodness Marvel is teaching us how to cook and be entertained at the same time. Nobody says this. It's all very generic. And that's why nobody's talking about it. So it is best to ignore it. You can get angry about it, but that's like being angry at wind. You're being angry at nothing. There's no substance there. There's only a fool goes out and just punches at wind. And so they're getting upset about that is crazy. Just steer toward the good stories. I like Nightclub #1. I do recommend it. It's a good comic. It's priced to sell. Thank you for putting it out. Looking forward to where it's go. I suspect where it's going to go, of course, is that the kids are going to get in over their heads and have to work their way out of it. So I'm here for it. Let's see it happen. Anyway, thanks for listening.